Greetings all fans, this is Attorney Jeffrey Howard and welcome to Legaleze 101. This is episode 6. We're going to be talking about the infamous PJC, or Prayer for Judgment Continued. That's what that stands for. This is a very interesting topic to me because this is a North Carolina concoction. Not a lot of other states have things like it as I understand it. And many people think they know what it means and think they know how to use it, particularly as it relates to traffic tickets. But the problem is most people don't. Even most lawyers that I talk to have a little bit of confusion as to what a PJC does and when's the right time to use it and when it's not. There is no Black's Law Dictionary entry for the Prayer for Judgment Continued because it's, like I said, it's a North Carolina concoction. But let's take each of those three words in turn and then we can sort of figure out or extrapolate what it means. So prayer, that's a request, just a fancy word for a request. Judgment, that's a decision of the court. Continued, that's a fancy lawyer word for postponed. So you put those things together and it is a prayer for judgment continued is a request that the court's decision be postponed. Well, that's pretty simple, right? Well, sort of. Yeah, it is kind of simple. And what it really means is that the decision of the court is postponed indefinitely so that the judgment, the decision, is never actually entered or made official. So that's why it doesn't come back to hurt you. And we'll talk about what hurting you means in terms of PJCs and traffic tickets in a moment. I think the simplest way to explain it is it's like a legal mulligan, if you're familiar with the golf term, where you get sort of a do-over. You're asking the court not to hold this against you, and if you get the PJC and you use it correctly, remember that's the whole point of this little thing, is that they won't hold it against you. But of course, it's never that simple. There are two ways that PJCs are considered in terms of traffic tickets, and those are DMV, the Division of Motor Vehicles, and insurance companies. They each get to look at traffic tickets in separate ways, similar but separate. Essentially, all traffic offenses give you a certain number of points from a DMV perspective and an insurance perspective. Sometimes those points are identical. In other words, one offense might get you 3 DMV points and 3 insurance points, but it's not always the case. Well, the same offense might give you 2 DMV points, but only 1 insurance point. So, you know, they don't have to be consistent, but we lawyers know all that stuff, and or at least we try to. The effect of DMV points is that they do nothing. 1 through 11 do nothing to you. Number 12, though, will revoke your license. So you don't want to get any more than 11 when you're talking about DMV points. For insurance points, each point does something. It increases your premiums over the next experience period, or 3 years. 1 insurance point can increase your insurance premiums by 25%. So that's a lot of stuff, a lot of money, so very dangerous. So let's take this by example. For DMV, you get 2 PJCs per person in a 5-year period before DMV will hold anything against you. So for the first 2 PJCs you use, they won't hurt you in terms of losing your license as a result of DMV points. That's awesome, right? Great. For insurance purposes, though, you only get 1 PJC per household in a 3-year period. So let's go back and look at DMV. For DMV purposes, you get 2 PJCs per person over a 5-year period. For insurance purposes, you only get 1 PJC per household, meaning anybody who is an adult family member living in your home. 1 per the whole household in a 3-year period. So you have to remember that. For example, if mom uses a PJC and then dad tries to use a PJC within 3 years, that 3-year experience period, then neither of them will count. They'll sort of cancel each other out. So that's a big stinking deal. You have to use these correctly. Of course, if you use the PJC correctly, the mulligan effect is that you get no insurance points. That's great. The big problem is, as I mentioned earlier, is that people in North Carolina think of PJC as a panacea. Oh, I got a traffic ticket, just ask for PJC. Just ask for PJC. Got another traffic ticket, ask for PJC. But after a certain point, normally after your 2nd or 3rd, they're not going to make any difference. They'll cancel each other out. The court won't look at any of them anymore. When I say the court, I shouldn't say the DMV people or the insurance people won't look at any of them anymore, and they won't do you any good. So it makes so much sense to talk to a lawyer before you start spending PJCs willy-nilly. More importantly, in a traffic ticket context, many counties will negotiate with you a little bit more liberally than others, and as a result, you may not need to burn a PJC. I keep that in my back pocket as sort of the ace in the hole in case I absolutely have to use it. but I don't use those willy-nilly because of the reason that I mentioned. You have to use them sparingly because you only get so many per person or per household depending on how you look at it. So don't use them willy-nilly. Without knowing when to hold them and when to fold them, you can cause yourself more harm than good. So before you use a PJC, please make sure you talk to an attorney. Thanks for joining me again. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you learned something useful. And remember, if you have a personal injury workers' comp claim or a traffic ticket, make sure you call Jeffrey Allen Howard, Attorney at Law, PLLC, at 919-929-2992 or 888-929-5241. I also have a pretty cool website you may know about. Thanks a lot. Have a good one.